really do mow hair very well.
I did once teach you both to crochet.
We don't speak of that.
It was a disaster.
Raising children, that sounds like they're growing them in the fields.
Sort of that shape, rectangle shape.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's terrible, isn't it?
No.
As they would say on Time Team, it's rectilinear.
Yes.
It mats together, and that's because of all the fibres. Oh, smelling these blackberries and just thinking about eating them, even though I don't like blackberries, but I know what they taste like.
Look at me all la-di-da on the computer. I'll just stick these on the blockers because they make a noise.
So I ended, whoops, I've just lost that stitch. Oh, grab it. There we go.
So Bryony said to Kay, you know this best foot forward thing? Which foot is it?
She said...
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring a brand new episode of the Yarny Book Club.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited because I've seen
excited. Yes. So have I.
It's marvellous. It's marvellous. Oh, do you know what? I've never seen anyone... Is it Surrey Alpaca?
Yes.
I got it right.
You did, well done.
This time, she dyes some Surrey Alpaca, and it's like... I think you might have seen it in the outtakes. Water dropped everywhere.
Gosh, it really did. Water just pours off that stuff. Yeah, any dyers out there will know, you know, when you lift it up, it just it doesn't hold water the same way.
What a disaster.
That, you know, normal wool does. Yeah. Went all over the floor.
It's an epic episode. It is just so brilliant because the colours are like so reminiscent for me. It makes me think of like, I don't know, but you see, I'm not a foodie. Why is it that I just see puddings in the colourway that you dye?
It is a bit sort of puddingy, but very springy as well, very spring-like, I think.
Well, what is a traditional pudding to have in spring? Or no, it's autumn. That's where is that when you have rhubarb? No. When you have rhubarb?
No, rhubarb.
Doesn't it grow at a funny time?
I'm not sure when it naturally grows, you know, when you can naturally harvest it, but you can force rhubarb as well, can't you?
Oh.
So I'm not sure. When's rhubarb season? I feel like it's got to be autumn because a lot of harvesting things aren't they?
One of my grandmas, in fact, I would go as far as to say, I'm sorry, grandparents, neither of them were that good at the cooking.
Were they not?
No. But one of them, she used to make the most tremendous rhubarb crumble.
Ah.
In fact, that was the only thing she could make that was delicious.
I love rhubarb. It's one of those things, isn't it, that you either love it or really, really don't like it.
There was a problem with my grand's rhubarb crumble, though.
Was it not sweet enough?
She served it with custard.
Oh, yummy.
But it would have only been good if you enjoyed slicing your custard.
Oh, was it really thick? Right.
I mean, no matter what we said to her,
solid
it
custard.
was like completely solid.
I still eat it, to be fair.
Are you coming out?
I'm happy with any form of custard, whether it's packet custard, straight from the tub, homemade. I'll eat it anyway.
I prefer creme anglaise.
That's custard. It's just
That's
custard.
So funny. This is quite the 2 years for us because this year, right now, it is our anniversary, isn't it?
Quite the 2 years.
Yeah, I shall continue.
Our anniversary?
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't it?
What anniversary are we talking about?
We started the show 10 years ago.
In May, it is.
So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary in May.
Yeah.
And next year, it's our 10-year anniversary of us beginning our Patreon.
Mm.
And, I mean, what a journey it's been.
That's bonkers.
Because the day that we started out with our Patreon 9 years ago, 10 years ago next year.
Yeah.
So it's a double anniversary. It's very exciting.
Double anniversary.
Yeah, because anniversary this year of the start of the show, anniversary next year of this becoming our job.
Yes.
And in the last 9 years, my goodness, you know, when we started, we've always had the same levels of patronage. Starting at bronze, running up to platinum. And when we started, I mean, it was overwhelming the people who immediately signed up because they were actually signing up to nothing. Because we had no tutorials. We had nothing.
It was just signing up to a promise of things to come.
It was. But now, Oh my goodness, Neil, there's over 300 tutorials. There's over 90 reviews. And the cool thing with the reviews is now it's you and Jen doing the reviews.
Yes.
So we get...
Oh, I love Jen's reviews. She makes me buy things.
2 perspectives,
Yeah.
which I think is marvellous. There is my self-contained knitter show. There's also, you forget about the things that are past. The Dan and Laura project, where I tried to master sock knitting.
Yeah.
Journey to the Centre of the Yoke. 2 seasons of that.
Yeah.
Steeking.
Yeah.
I mean, just crazy. But then
there's
also...
all the pop shows.
There's all the pop shows. But then there's the gold editions of things like Walking the Wall, Walking the Dales, Walking the Moors, New Adventures of the Bakery Bears. These are extended editions of the shows which
Design
we put
Diary.
Design Diary. I mean, the list is on. There is literally...
I wonder how long it would take you to watch everything. That would be interesting.
Honey, it's like
wouldn't it?
Netflix.
It would be like days and days and days
Netflix.
and days.
We get so many wonderful messages from people saying they had no idea what they were getting into when they sign up. And it is literally, you sign up as a silver patron, you're going to get 75% of the stuff. And you can just disappear for hours, whether it be cooking, because there's all the cooking shows.
There is.
We're currently re-releasing all our original favourite places to knit with all the terribleness that was before. I'm like adopting all the new, production techniques to turn them into something which, is really quite watchable. Now, I say all this because you would have thought in all that time that someone within our vicinity, someone perhaps within our family, may have chosen to take up crafting. But no, our daughter Bryony did not choose to do that. Until the last 2 weeks.
Oh my word. This has been amazing. So, our daughter Bryony, who is 18 now, has never shown the remotest interest in any sort of knitting, crochet, anything that I do.
We must just say we're pretty cool because we aren't people... I was brought up to think, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So, don't force anything on anyone.
Yeah.
Have it there.
No.
Have it be available. And if they choose to.
I did once teach you both to crochet.
We don't speak of that.
It was a disaster. It was an utter disaster.
More from my perspective.
They both hated it.
It was awful.
And I have mentioned, Bryony obviously sees me knit every single day. So if she ever had the slightest desire to knit, she would ask me and I would show her. And like I said, we've never forced it on her.
No.
Her thing has always been art. She's always drawn. Yeah. But then a couple of weeks ago, just out of the blue, she said to me, do you know what, Mum? I think I'd quite like to learn to cross stitch. Well, I could have...
It was hilarious.
I go to the foot of our stairs, as they say.
What was cool was Kate was trying to be cool.
I was like, oh, that's nice, darling. Would you like to?
I could hear the internal monologue. Yes.
I said, that's no problem. I can teach you, obviously, how to do that. I said, where would you like to start? What would you like to do? What's motivated you? And she said she was thinking about when she goes to university and she'd quite like to be able to decorate her room with things. So, yeah, and I was like, oh, gosh, I said, that's amazing. I said, well, what we need to do then is just get you something really small to start with. And, we'll take it from there. So I had a look around and I found some really small cross-stitch kits from a company called Mouse Lofts, I think it is, or Mouse Loft. They're only like 3 inches. It goes in a little 3-inch hoop and it comes with the hoop and everything you need to do it. She got the first one, which was a llama, and I showed her what to do one Saturday morning and she was completely away.
Yeah.
Honestly, she took to it like a duck to water, as they say.
On a mission.
I literally spent 10 minutes just showing her the very basics and just left her to it. And she finished that tiny llama, I think, on the Sunday. I showed her on the Saturday. She finished it on the Sunday. And it was just brilliant.
How much done it?
She's on her 4th one of those little ones now. She's done 3 and she's on the 4th one, which the last one she's doing is a penguin. And she's been brilliant because she did that first one and immediately she then got the next one. I'd got her another 2 in the meantime and they hadn't arrived and she'd finished the first one, and she sent me a text from school saying, have they arrived yet? That's really sweet. So she started the second one, but she did the whole thing. The only thing she asked me to do was to put the fabric in the frame, in the hoop, because she wasn't really confident with that. And the fabric, one thing I will say about those little kits, the piece of Ada fabric you get is not big enough. It barely fits into the little circular hoop, and I couldn't substitute it with another one that I'd got because the one that comes with it is 11 count, and that's why I wanted to get those. You know, the squares effectively are a bit bigger, so I thought that would be a great place to start. So I thought, no, we'll manage, we'll squeeze it in. Anyway, she organised the whole thing. I showed her what to do with her threads, and she did all that, and she just did the whole thing. And then she went on to the third one, which was the flamingo, I think, and that was her favourite. And even with the flamingo, she made a bit of an error. She added one stitch too many on the beak thing. And she just said to me, oh, but I just made it a bit longer and added something else over there. And I was like,
Jeez.
I said, that's amazing.
She's got it.
And she did the same thing with the penguin. She was doing the penguin last night, and she'd made one of the penguin's sort of flippery wing things a little bit bigger than it should be. So she just added a little bit of extra. I said, that's totally fine, darling. It looks amazing.
Yes.
But in the meantime, she'd been looking around for like a slightly bigger one, and I'd found an Etsy shop in the UK that produced cross-stitch kits, but they were all kind of geeky, you know, because she's very geeky with things like, you know, Star Trek, for example. What I found for her it's a little row of all of the Star Trek, is it Enterprise? No,
it's
Next Generation.
Yeah.
And it's all of the little people, and they're really cute. They're sort of really chubby, and, you know, their heads are really big and their bodies are quite small.
Perfect.
And there's no back stitch on it, because we're starting out, you know, without the back stitch, because that sort of complicates it, doesn't it? So I found that and got that kit for her. But the thing that's been brilliant is she's not started that kit. She said, right, I'm going to finish those 4 little ones I've got first, and then I'm going to move on to the bigger thing. And I think that's just brilliant, because, you know, the sort of urge to just plough in
skills
with the exciting one must have been like,
she wants to do a good job.
But she wants to do a good job, so she's finishing those 4 little ones, and she'll finish the penguin, I think, today or tomorrow. And then, because it's Easter, holidays coming up, so she's looking forward to working on her Star Trek one. So it's just been brilliant. And, you know, every evening now, after she's had a tea, she's got headphones on, listening to some music, and she's stitching away.
Yeah.
And she's in a little zone, and she said to me, oh, it's really nice, this, because, you know, you can just stitch and I'm just listening to my music, and it's just like, oh, I'm really sort of chilled. And I was like, oh, my word.
So to tie this,
you know,
little tail up in a nice bow, we thought, you know, we should ask her, you know, because we knew it was clearly from us. Where did she get the inspiration from? And she said, it was from my boyfriend, Harry.
She did. She said, I was chatting to him one day and saying, oh, I'd really like to do something sewing-wise. And he said, oh, why don't you try cross-stitch? And she's like, oh, yeah, I think I will. And I said to her, oh, right, okay. So the fact that she's been living in this house for 18 years, surrounded by cross-stitches and,
none of that
you know...
Doesn't matter.
As soon as the boyfriend suggests it, it's marvellous.
Doesn't matter how she got there.
It doesn't matter. We laughed about it. I don't care.
She's there, and it's marvellous.
It's brilliant.
And speaking of marvellous, I can see a rather lovely project bag over there. So I think it's about... Oh, and the project. I can see the project too, and it really is marvellous. Kay Jones, what's on your needles? So
this is very exciting, and it actually links to the dyeing that you're going to be watching me do. Because... well, there's a bit of a backstory. This is a pair of socks, okay? And I've got these socks in one of my very favourite sock project bags. Let me just take my little notebook out. It's this one. I've probably shown you this one many times. It's from lovely Emma at Eldon Woodcraft. And I love this because it's got this pink-haired lady. And you see the pink-haired lady here walking her dog through the forest. And wouldn't you just love to be that pink-haired lady Oh, it's really sweet. So yes, there's a pair of socks in this bag and I've finished one of the socks. So this is a new cast on.
Thank you, caller.
You're welcome. And now this cast on was inspired by a couple of things, but mainly, can you remember on the last show, I showed you some yarn that I'd bought from 3 by the Sea Designs, and 2 of the skeins were a heavier fingering weight. I don't know if you can remember that. And I said at the time, I think I could knit this yarn on a 2.75mm with 56 stitches. So I actually wound one of those skeins and I've cast it on, and I can't show you it because it's for something later in the year, but it's working out brilliantly. And it inspired me to think, do you know what? I'm pretty sure I've seen a yarn base that I could buy to dye on that was a similar sort of weight. And the thing that made me realise was I thought I'd seen this in Eden Cottage Yarns shop, and I actually bought one, and I'll show you that later in Endy Bits. But it made me go and look on the place where I buy my undyed yarn from, which is Yarn Undyed, where I get all of my undyed yarn. It's brilliant, brilliant shop. It's got such a huge, wide range of bases. You can buy small quantities, you can buy one skein if you want to. I buy them in packs of 5. It's like next day delivery. It's absolutely fantastic. So I went and looked and I found a base. And the base, I can't show you a label because there's no label because it came in a pack, but I will show you the one that's on the Eden Cottage later. But it's basically a 100-gram skein. It's an 80-10-10. So it's 80% superwash merino, 10 cashmere, 10 nylon. And you get 350 metres. Now that was similar to the yardage in the 3 by the Sea Designs. It wasn't the same, but it was similar. And I thought, oh, I'm going to order one of those packs and just have a look at it. So I did.
So that 3 by the Sea skein inspired the purchase?
It did.
So I think great credit.
Absolute credit for sending.
3 by the Sea.
Yeah, because at the time,
full disclosure.
At the time, I was a bit disappointed because I said at the time, I think, didn't I, that I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this? Because it's thicker than a normal fingering weight. But actually, it made me think a bit more creatively. So, like I say, I've cast one of those on, and
goodness.
It's absolutely beautiful, I've got to say.
Thanks to the 3 by the Sea
Absolutely.
ladies.
It's a beautiful colour. I cast on the one that's like purples, and it's knitting up beautifully. So yeah, that entirely inspired me to go and find, or to go and look and see if I could find something. So I did, and when I dyed up the yarn that you're going to see me dye up for the Yarny Book Club, I had some of the dye mix left over, which I dyed up a skein of Suri alpaca in, and you will see me do that. But after I'd finished filming, I threw in one of these skeins into the pot with just a little bit of the dye mix and dyed myself up a skein, and I'm knitting a pair of socks, and it's fantastic. I'm like, this is a revelation. This is a revelation.
When did you dye that?
The same day that we filmed, but I knit this sock in 2 days. And I knit it in 2 days because I'm using 2.75mm and 56 stitches. So I'll show you the yarn. So this is the colour that the Suri alpaca dyes up that you will see later on. But you didn't see me dye this actual skein here. So it's this gorgeous soft pink. Isn't that just beautiful? And as you can imagine, I love it because it's pink. It's difficult to tell the thickness of the yarn just from looking at a yarn cake, isn't it? But it is very much thicker than your sort of standard 75-25. And it's so soft because it's got cashmere in. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And when I saw it, I thought, yeah, I'm sure that's going to work. And it absolutely is working. So I finished a sock. So here it is. I'm knitting my Prairie Socks pattern, and I've used 56 stitches, 2.75mm needle, and I'm following the pattern exactly as written. So the pattern's got this beautiful Eye of Partridge heel. Let me tell you something about the Eye of Partridge heel, right? I've always struggled to get it to look.
It was so funny because I'd do and he'd be like, "Oh, yours looks great,"
I know.
and then you'd do it and be like, "Oh, I don't like
I've
it."
always struggled with I've Partridge to get it to look as it should. Do you know where you get that kind of checkerboard? Can you see the texture here that you get? And I've realised my issue was that when I was doing the slip stitch row, I was working it too tight. So my little strands across the back were too tight, and I just loosened up on that slip stitch row, and you can now see the Eye of Partridge beautifully. Look, can you see it? Isn't it gorgeous? And the prairie socks pattern just works perfectly. Isn't this colour just absolute heaven?
So if your partridge eyes aren't winking, loosen up on your slip stitches.
So that's what I did. I
Yes.
just knit the slip stitch rows in a more relaxed fashion. I was more deliberate, let's say, because I think that slip stitch row, you naturally just knit it the tension you will knit a normal row. And if you think about that, that's you're trying to get those stitches neat, aren't you? So yeah, that worked brilliantly. The only thing I did differently was I did a length of heel flap that would have been in a size medium. So instead of 28 rows for the heel flap, I did 32, just to make sure that I'd got enough room over my instep. And I've tried this on and it fits like an absolute dream. This is the prairie socks pattern is like just a sweet little texture. And I designed these socks quite some years ago. I think it might have been like 2017 or something. And my inspiration for these socks was the Little House on the Prairie books, and the little stitch pattern reflects the wheat fields that you see on a prairie, when you've got a summer breeze blowing across and they're all sort of moving in the wind. So that's where the inspiration for the stitch pattern comes from. And I just thought it would look beautiful with this yarn, and it absolutely does. So yeah, I've finished one entire sock.
And it's spectacular.
It literally took me, like I cast it on a Saturday, and I think I knit through to about here on the Saturday, and then I finished it on Sunday. And I was like, what? I can knit a sock in 2 days. It's a shorty because that's what I like these days. But even so, and I haven't measured my gauge. Well, no, I tell a lie. I think I did measure my gauge, and I think it was 7.5 stitches to the inch I got. Yeah, and it's just perfect. So, I mean, I know, like I say, I know that Eden Cottage have this base, and I'll show you later on, but I'm sure if you shopped around as well, you might find other shops that have got this base if you wanted to try it out, or if you are dyeing your own yarn. I know that Yarn and Dyed do ship to other countries, but if you're in a different country, then I'm sure if you shopped around, you'd be able to find something that's similar. So I cast on the second, but literally I've only just cast it on. I did this on the Sunday when I finished that sock. I cast this on. I've only done like 2 rows of the rib. But I'm saving this for next weekend when I'm going to finish the second sock, because I know I can. And it was just such a pleasure to knit. So I'm using Magic Loop. And by chance, I had one of my favourite Magic Loop needles in 2.75. Because when Dan first started sock knitting, I taught him using Magic Loop, and because he was so tight, he was using 2.75. So I had one, and it's one of the Addy lace? Yes. And I love these ones for Magic Loop. These are sort of my favourite at the moment. I did go through a phase of using the Chowgoo mini twists, but although they're fantastic and they're brilliant to use, I find that because it's got that super thin cable, I was finding I was getting lines of tight stitches down either side of my socks. Because as you transfer needles over, it's pulling that last stitch to the width of the cable, which is super thin on Chowgoo. So I stopped using those, and I've been using Addy lace for ages now, and I really like them. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled that I can now. I'm going to get Bryony to try this on, actually. I forgot to do that, but I will get her to try it on, and I'm sure it will fit her lovely, because it means I can, if I ever need to knit a quick pair of socks, I can use that base, that yarn, and know that I can get a pair of socks done easily within a week. I'm going to test a theory on whether I could do the same thing for Dan, because I used 72 stitches for him. So in theory, can I do the same thing for Dan and use 64 stitches? So when I've finished this pair, I'm just going to use this yarn as a test, and I'll cast on 64 and I'll knit through a tiny cuff and a bit of a heel turn and stuff, and just get him to slip it on his foot and see if it works. So, absolute genius. Dan Jones, what's on your needles?
Well, one of the things that we produce every month for our Baker of Our patrons is the Self-Contained Knitter. And yesterday, anyone who's been keeping up with this series will have watched my episode, which was all about projects which have caused you to feel guilty and bad. You have many of those, or you've had many of those.
I do.
Yes,
I
yes.
have.
Like a cardigan, for example. Yes. So I produced an episode, and it was really interesting digging into this particular issue, because about a year and a half ago, it's about a year and a half ago, not last Christmas, Christmas before, Kay designed for me a pair of mitts. I'd knitted one
It's your
pair.
birthday, actually.
Yes, October. I'd knitted one pair of mitts and another mitt, and I was like, yes, I really need to do this. But on those mitts that I'd knitted, I'd had to do quite a long bit of backwards loop cast on, and I was rubbish at it. I just couldn't get my head around it. I started these new mitts, and I did a whole one. This is it. It's the Equinox mitt, and I knitted the whole mitt, and then I cast on the next mitt, and I knitted through, and I stopped as I hit the thumb gusset. And the reason why I stopped was, in my head, even though I'd already knitted one of these, in my head I was thinking of the backwards loop cast on issue, the fact I couldn't do it, it was making me disengage with the project, and it caused the project to sit in a bag untouched for pretty much a year. I produced this episode yesterday of the Self-Contained Knitter, and within that episode I just said, this is crazy. You know, whether knitting... I actually came to the conclusion that knitting mitts is for me, and it's my stubbornness and not wanting to embrace being rubbish at something and learning to get better at that thing, backwards loop cast on, for example, that was stopping me knit the mitt, because I had enjoyed every other process within it. So I thought, right, I'm going to bite the bullet, go talk to Kay. So I went and talked to Kay, and she said, well, you don't even need to do a backwards loop cast on. Just do a knitted on cast on. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I've done that before. And then she dropped the bombshell. It was the other mitts which needed, I'm pretty sure it was 12 or 13 stitches casting on. It was a long line of stitches.
Yeah, I think it was a pattern
To do with the
where
colour
you
work.
don't do a thumb gusset.
Right.
There's no gusset. You just put stitches on hold.
So that's
and
the
then
difference.
you have to cast on over that gap, which is about 12 stitches.
That's it was the Latvian type mitt, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Where there isn't a
thank you.
gusset, it just comes out of the fabric, doesn't it?
So Kay says, you're only going to do one stitch. Yeah. I'm like, and doesn't that tell you everything? It does about human nature, because you put off things thinking it's going to be difficult. And two things. Number one, it wasn't difficult because there's only one stitch. And number two, I didn't even have to do the backwards loop cast on anyway. So, the last time I showed this, it was down there. And I picked this up about a week ago, and look.
Yeah, you've nearly done.
I mean, just flying. And I'm absolutely loving it. It's the Regia Merino yak yarn, because that's all I ever seem to use.
It's true.
Because it's marvellous.
I said to you the other day, I must knit you a pair of socks in it. And
That would be nice.
I've got a beautiful bright pink skein, and I said, oh, would you like a bright pink pair? And he's like, yeah, I'll wear them.
I don't care.
So I want to definitely knit you a pair of
You knit
Reggie
them?
socks, and I'm going... And
I'll wear them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably use some kind of texture pattern, because texture just shows up so well. I mean, look how lovely it looks.
So these are the Equinox mitts, designed for me specifically by Kay, so there's no pattern. It is such a lovely thing to knit, and I am committed to not stopping, and I'm not going to stop knitting mitts.
No.
That's the wrong thing to do. I currently would say I probably have an issue mentally, because I feel funny about this whole process, because it was sat for so long. So I need to knit another pair of mitts, and I just need to do the thumb gusset, because I now know what I'm doing with the knitted on cast on, and just get it done. I don't need to sort of create this massive issue, because I want to be able to make these things.
Yeah.
Because they are fun.
I love knitting mitts, and I mean this particular design, if you are one of our patrons and you took part in our Advent design, not last Christmas, Christmas before, I designed a Christmas stocking, and I took this bit, the cuff and the Latvian braid was at the top of the Christmas stocking. And I stole a design off myself and put it on the cuff, because how beautiful does it look on the cuff of a mitten? And then the body is just like what's it called? Is it called the dot stitch, that one? And the colourway is 07518 of the Regia Merino Yak.
So I'm using the square Cubics needles because I'm not doing any fancy stitches. There's no lace or anything.
No.
And also as well, with it not being socks.
There is just there.
Yeah, but that was like at the very start.
Much. Yeah,
it wasn't very much. Because you're not like turning heels and stuff going on, it's really not a problem. So Equinox mitts, Cubics, Merino Yak, great project. I'll have these finished imminently. What else is on your needles?
I look forward to wearing those next winter.
Yes.
I love myself. I love myself.
Yes.
I love me some mittens.
This episode, I'm going to kit you out.
Kit me out.
I am indeed.
Are you?
Wait and see what's coming later.
Oh, how exciting. So the next thing I've been working on this every single day, is my reading shawl.
It's not remotely a chore, is it?
No, well, it is. No, I mean, that's the wrong word to use, isn't it? It's not a chore, but...
You've been loving the long rows.
It is the third time I've knit this now, and... the reading is my reading shawl. It's one of my designs. I published it last, I think, September time, maybe October. And I've knit two of them. One for me, which was the pattern one, and then one for Bryony straight after. But this one is a scrappy version. And I think because... I think the thing that makes it not sluggish at all, that's the wrong word, but not as kind of compulsive as the ones I've knit before, is because in the actual pattern it's knit in 12 sort of sections, if you like, and you can use, I did, a advent calendar of mini skeins, and you separate those off with a tonal. And I think because you're working through it methodically, and that's how my brain likes to work, I like to tick things off. It's section 1, section 2, section 3. I got through those much more comfortably, let's say. Whereas this, because it's scrappy, it's not like that. I'm just knitting until I reach the stitch count that I need to reach, and just changing yarns whenever I fancy. But it's looking fantastic, I've got to say. Gosh, I don't even know where I was the last time I showed this.
Well, you were here, weren't you?
It's difficult to show because it is now so big on the needles, and I am getting fairly close to the end. I've got about another 20 or 30 garter ridges to go, and each garter ridge is 2 rows, and I'm just doing 1 garter ridge a day, so I'm just doing 2 rows a day. But that actually takes me about half an hour now because the rows are so long. I could probably do it a bit quicker, but I get distracted, because I just get distracted. If I try and focus, I can probably do it a bit quicker. But, it's about half an hour every day, which is not a lot, is it, And I try to get it done very, very first thing when I first get up in the morning so that it's done. Why are you laughing?
No, it's just so funny. Get it done so it's out of the way.
Yeah, I know. But I always... Because, I knit as my job now. Therefore, I always have tasks that I've got to get through every day. I break everything down day by day so I don't get overwhelmed, and I knit what I need to knit on each thing work-wise every day, and then that leaves me time in the evening for doing whatever I want. So I've been trying to get this one done very first thing. I didn't do it first thing this morning because I wanted to finish something that I'm going to show you next. So I haven't done my 2 rows yet today, but I will be doing them. And it struck me, because this is going to be a gift, and it struck me, I thought, gosh, I hope it's not too leery. Is it like, I hope it's not too loud and in your face. But then I just thought, well, this is not something that you wear out. That's not the idea of it. The reading shawl is as it as the name tells you. It's a big, squishy shawl. You wrap it around yourself, you get snuggled up, and you read a book. When I've finished this, it's going to be a gift, like I say. I'm going to choose one of my favourite books that I've read recently. I'm going to buy the book. So I'm going to wrap up the shawl. There's going to be a book. There's going to be some treats to eat as well. And, I'm trying to create that. Yes, it's a gift that I've made, but I'm creating more of a feeling. I want the person who's receiving it to think, I'm going to set aside an hour that day or whatever, and I'm just going to snuggle up and I'm going to start that book and I'm going to eat the treats and make myself a cup of tea. And I'm giving them, I suppose, permission to spend time on themselves.
Can I just ask?
Because this person does not do that.
They're my friend too. Maybe I should put in one of my favourite books as well.
Oh, maybe you should. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do that, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
I know which one she'll want to read, but I may be wrong. It's not going to be a boring
I thought you
one,
meant you'll know which one of my books that she'll want to read.
No,
you meant
no.
your choice and my choice.
I'm excited to think which book you might use.
I'll have a think.
That'll be cool, won't it? So, yeah, I'm getting to the end, and this is scheduled to be finished by sort of end of April, beginning of May. I should be finished with this, which is fine. That's plenty of time. I have got leeway in that, so it's not a problem. The shawl is knit with fingering weight held double. So it's, it's a nice weighty thing. And I know from things that I've read and what people have said that having something that's got some weight to it, it's really good for calming, isn't it? I know that you can buy those weighted blankets, can't you, these days? And I think this sort of serves a similar purpose, having used mine really, really regularly, and Bryony does as well. It does have that nice weight to it, so when you wrap it around yourself, you feel like, I always feel a bit sort of comforted and a bit calmed. Yeah, but I wanted it to be kind of bright, fun colours, because I want it to be uplifting, to wrap around yourself, on those dark winter days, especially when you're most likely going to be using this. The weather, you're not going to use it when it's warm and sunny outside. So, yeah. So get in there with it, and hopefully next time I show you, it might be done. How exciting.
Excellent. I said that I was going to kit you out on the upper half.
Oh, yes, you'll have to knit me some trousers or something next.
Knitted trousers. Some might say knitted hose.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Save that before I start spouting off. We'll save that for next episode.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
This is the Aaron Harper Gansey.
Oh, it's lovely.
And it smells like a field of sheep. And what's so lovely about this now is I'm on the yoke at the top, and what's so sad is the rounds are passing way too quickly. They are.
Yeah, because you're getting less and less.
Yeah, well, I've come down a load of stitches already. In a minute, I'm about to finish this. And then
aren't I going to look posh? I sounded Yorkshire then.
I've got 2 rounds to go. I'll be on to the final section of the yoke tonight.
Look, I could be wearing it, couldn't I? I could be wearing it.
I mean, that is just...
Look how good it's going to look.
It is, it's going to look amazing. I've already said that it's going to look wonderful. She's going to be down the garden.
Yes.
With this
I'm going to be the poshest gardener in the town,
Look at you all, la-di-da.
I know. Gardening in my Shetland wool sweater.
So it is Jameson and Smith.
Beautiful.
And it is a really, really lovely pattern, actually. There were 1 or 2 little challenges, but I contacted them and they answered them really quickly. The designer answered them really quickly, which was just marvellous. Yeah. So, the little issues which were there were very quickly resolved. Yeah. And then I've been off. So, lots of ends to weave in at the end. But do you know what? I sort of enjoy that.
There's lots of ends.
It's fun. It is fun. And following your tutorials, I'm golden.
That's the yarn, Jameson and Smith Aran. And the blue, isn't the blue gorgeous?
Musselburgh blue, isn't it?
Muscle blue.
Oh, sorry. Musselburgh, that's a place in Scotland.
It's also a hat.
Oh, okay.
Everybody in their uncle
Well, that would make sense, because wasn't the designer from Scotland?
Isolde Teague.
Yes.
Yeah, she's Scottish, isn't she, Isolde?
There you go.
I think so.
So that's the reason why.
Yes. It's absolutely lovely yarn.
Yeah, it's just a little bit tricky on the cast on because it doesn't have a lot of give.
Doesn't have a lot of give, no.
I didn't enjoy the ribbing at all.
Knitted
It was only
up.
once. You know, once you're into the plain knitting, then you're sort of away. And I've got to say, you know, the advice I would give to anyone, if you so wanted it, and I certainly don't think that this is where I lose confidence.
No, you've knitted how many jumpers?
Well, lots.
You've knitted a lot of colourwork jumpers now, so you absolutely can give advice.
And others too. The Samantha,
yeah,
the Cascades.
You've knit a lot of jumpers, so
the Irish coffee.
You do yourself down.
Well, I do. I just don't feel like.
Well, you absolutely.
I don't
can give
feel like
advice
I've got the right to say anything.
Of course you have. Look what you've done.
Were you to say to me, what advice would you give me with regards to, you know, if you were going to knit something like this? For me personally, I would say normally I don't like plain knitting. But when it's on a jumper, if you've got a really good yarn that's creating a lovely fabric, then you're off. I could not have got through that if I'd been using a yarn that was perhaps a completely
flat.
colour.
It's very heathered.
Yes.
You know, it's a beautiful that main colour. It's just gorgeous, isn't it? It's just a beautiful neutral without being boring in the slightest.
And this yarn's not expensive, is it?
No, not comparatively.
No. So it's not. It's and you know, think about the Let-Lopi. That's really cheap.
It is. Yeah.
I know
this is more expensive than the Let-Lopi, but
and
you know,
you can understand why to an extent because this is much more forgiving on the skin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there'll be lots of reasons, won't they, why it's more expensive, the production of it, probably.
Yeah. But the advice I would give is if you're going to be doing lots and lots of round and round knitting, you don't want to be like knitting in a really flat. Plain colour.
Yeah.
It would just be a real killer. And
it would drive me nuts.
Yeah. The other thing as well that I would say is that knitting in really dark colours, when I've had to do sections of black or sections of blue, it's slightly more challenging because it's sometimes harder to see your stitches.
It is.
So
it's harder on your eyes, isn't it? Especially
nothing wrong with that.
Reach a certain age.
Yes. Yeah. Nothing wrong with doing that in short bursts.
Oh yeah.
But you know, you're much better off with a slightly more bright and vibrant. Well, bright and vibrant. That's not the correct word. A lighter
tones.
But it's Aaron Hopper-Gansey racing through.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And you know, it's.
I can't wait to wear it. I feel like I'm going to look so fancy.
Such a tricky situation that you find yourself in at this point because you want to keep knitting, but you don't because you know you're going to finish. And you know that's such a funny.
I love the way
position
this
to be
bit's looking here now. Doesn't it look cool?
It's going to look even cooler when the next bit.
What does it
colour
look
work
like on the pattern? Oh yeah, it's like a twisty thing.
Yeah, but look at the one around the collar.
Oh yeah,
the one around the collar is.
Look how lovely it is.
Is absolutely amazing.
Look at him. He looks very fancy, doesn't he?
Gorgeous jumper. Approaching finish. Very exciting.
Can't wait. I'm going to go and find a boat to stand in front of like that man.
Yes. What else?
It's a big boat.
Is on your needles?
So, right. You need to prepare yourself for this one, right? Because I'm about to show you, I would say this is the most ugly yarn I think I've possibly ever knitted.
And thankfully, I don't care.
So I showed
because they're for me, that's why I said that.
They're for Dan. This is a pair of socks for Dan. And I showed a picture of this when I just started them on Instagram, I think. But then I think I've also posted in our Facebook group a picture of these because, well, I'll just show you. So what I'm doing is I'm using a skein of yarn that I've hoarded for, gosh, I don't know, 10 years or something ridiculous, a long time.
Now, we must just say, actually, that the reason why you dug this yarn out was we were going through my sock drawer.
Yes.
And we were looking at the socks which have worn the best.
Yeah.
And Kay's actually going to film another little sort of review. We did a review a few years ago which was all about how socks wear.
Yeah.
Kay got out lots of pairs of socks and looked at how over a course of time how have they worn. That's been massively popular.
Yeah.
So we're going to film another one of those because we've now got much more time. You know, there's been years that have passed with certain pairs of socks and we can look at, you know, different yarns and we identified that the old I've got 10-year-old pairs
of opal socks
that are still fine.
that he's still wearing, yeah. And
so that made you go and dig out?
It made me dig out one of the sort of vintage skeins. I won't go on about my opinion on opal now because I don't think it's the same as the vintage opal. So yeah, it made me go and dig one of these skeins out. And I received a gift many years ago. Was a very generous and overwhelming gift, to be honest, at the time, and I got 3 skeins of the Harry Potter opal yarn. Now, one of them I knitted a few years ago for Dan. You've not got them on today, you wore them the other day. I knit the one that was Harry, it was called Harry, and it was red and blue and sort of a dark green, and he's still wearing those. I got Lupin, which is the one I'm knitting, and then I also got Ron and Harry, which I've still got. But this one is Lupin, and I kept this one because I was going to knit this one originally and give them to Bryony because, you know, Lupin has always been her favourite character. But I just didn't think she would like wearing them because it's a bit more rustic and she likes really soft socks. So I just kept it, and now, although she still loves Lupin and she likes Harry Potter, you know, she's gone past that sort of really passionate stage. So I thought, well, I'm just going to knit them for Dan. So this is the yarn I'm using. So it's Opal Harry Potter and it's in the Lupin colourway. And I know that I think these sell for quite a lot on eBay these days, if you can find them. I think I've seen them for sort of $40, $50 a skein. And it's... Having knit it up, it's absolutely not for the colour. I think it's just because it's got a Harry Potter label on it. And I said to Dan when I was knitting this, you know, I feel like the people at Opal sat round a table when they were designing these Harry Potter yarns, if they do that, and just said, look, shall we just design the ugliest yarns we can? We'll stick a Harry Potter label on it and everybody will buy it. I'm telling you. That's what happened because, you know, sold out, you can't get it. So, because to be fair, the ones that were Harry are nice. They're, you know, they're perfectly nice. The other one that I've got, which is Ron and Harry, it's blues and sort of like a dull gold. It looks very much like the Starry Night sort of colour. It looks like it'll be fine. It won't be offensive in any way. This one, I can't say that because, well, here we go. So I've finished a sock now. When Dan shows you some images now, the sock isn't finished, but I have now finished it, which you'll see in a second. This is the yarn. Now, what I will say is, I don't think it's the colours and the stripes in this yarn that makes it so unpleasant. It's all of the horrible splotchy black stuff that they've put on top that I think makes them look unpleasant. Because if you look through that and just look at the colours and the stripes, I think it'd be a perfectly fine sock. And then what happened on the gusset, because I didn't want to put in a contrast heel because this base is very specific, the vintage one, I think. So what I did was I just pulled from the other end of the ball for the heel, and that worked perfectly. So over the gusset, what happened was I got some pooling, but it wasn't the stripes, obviously, that were the problem because they're just stripes and, you know, they don't really pool, they just get a little bit thinner. But the splotchy things on top pooled, and actually Bryony thinks it looks cool because she thinks it looks like what's the name of the ship in Star Trek? What are the bad people called?
Well, I'm not going to tell you because you knew yesterday.
I know, and now I can't remember because of my brain.
It's a Klingon warbird.
Oh, you see, I said it yesterday and now I couldn't remember it. Looks like a Klingon warbird flying across the sock. Look, so can you see how it's done this? I mean, what is this all about here? When I saw what was happening in the knitting, I was like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I've just got to go with it. But the second sock won't be exactly like this because I've cast it on and it's cast on a bit further down. They're not going to match exactly. I just cast it on where this one ended. So it'll start here And it's not far off, actually. It starts here. So it's not going to, the splotches are not going to pool in the same way. And it'll be interesting to see how they pool over the gusset on the next sock, won't it? But the sock itself, you know, the fabric and everything is marvellous. It's going to be a really hard-wearing pair of socks. And, you know, I quite love them. Their ugliness is, you know, making me quite love them. So I finished this one this morning. I just did the very toe first thing this morning. And I cast on the second. I've just done 2 rows of rib. There's nothing really to show you there. Yeah, so we'll see what happens over the gussets with this one. What I do with Dan's socks now, I've learnt over the years that the things that help them fit really well is the heel flap for Dan. I always do, so this is a 72 stitch sock and I use a 2.5mm needle. So normally that would mean a heel flap of 36 rows, but I do 40. So I do a slightly longer heel flap for Dan, which means that you get a bit more, first of all, you get a bit more room back here, but then also you get a bit of a bigger instep. And that's where Dan's foot is really wide across the instep. But then the other thing I've been doing, gosh, I don't know how long I've been doing this, but I designed a modified umbrella toe so that it was longer, because again, that suits Dan's feet better. So I think, where does it start, the toe? It's sort of, I can't even see the first decrease now. It's sort of about here, and it makes the toe about 3 inches long as opposed to around 2 for a normal umbrella toe. And that really suits his foot, because Dan's foot is 12.5 inches long. So I tend to knit to about 10.25 inches, and then I put on that modified toe, because I don't like it to be too negative easing the length, because you don't want, I find anyway, you don't want to be having your toes really, really rub against the end here, because I think that causes friction and can wear the socks out. So I don't like too much negative easing in the length.
12.5 inches long.
Your foot is 12.5 inches long, yeah.
That's exactly the same length as my forearm.
Well, it always is, isn't it?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Is it like from there to there or something? Yeah. That's how big your foot is. Yeah.
Bonkers.
So yeah, that's one done. Second one on the needles, and I cast these on. I've been using, one of my little books that I like. This one, I like this one. Is this Midori? No, it's Hobonichi. It's a little Hobonichi book. So I cast this on the 5th of March, and I finished it yesterday, which was the 26th of March. So it took me about 3 weeks to knit that first sock, but I wasn't doing it in my scheduled way. I was just knitting it whenever. But I will now. I have diaried it in to do like 10 rows a day, because there's no rush for these, but I would like to get a little bit done on them each day. And I'm keen to get to the gusset now, because I want to see what's going to happen. But why this Harry Potter yarn? I know with the other pair I knit for Dan, the Harry ones, it also had all these splodges over the top. It's not very pretty, is it? I mean, I guess it's a matter of opinion. Particularly, what made it pool, this is the area here that's been repeated. Sorry, this orangey and yellow bit, where I get the spaceship up here. And it's these longer black splodges that have pulled together to form that spaceship. So, we'll see what happens on the next one.
Right, folks, the moment has come for more book-inspired yarny goodness. So I shall shut up so we can enjoy the next episode of the Yarny Book Club.
I love reading books and adore dyeing yarn, so I thought in this series it would be wonderful to combine them. Over the next 6 episodes, join me as I share with you some of my favourite books and we create colourways inspired by them. Along the way, I hope you find some inspiration for some great reads and we also discover some fantastic new colourways. Welcome to the Yarny Book Club.
I am back, everybody. Yes, I'm back in the kitchen for another Yarny Book Club. And I'm so excited because this time is a little bit different for a couple of reasons. One is that the book that I've chosen this time is very different to, first of all, the sort of books that I usually read, but also very different from the previous 2 books, which I think is lovely, isn't it? It's the great variety. And it also, the other reason is that because we're now coming into spring, the section of the book that's my inspiration for the colourway is when spring emerged, and it was the colours that were sort of mentioned and the things that were going on at the time that inspired this particular colourway. So it's a very fun spring-like colour, which I think is great. It's extremely different to the last 2 that we dyed up. So again, that's going to be really fun, first of all to dye and then also to knit up, because I don't knit it up until I knit it here with you, so that's going to be fun. So I need to tell you what the book is then, don't I? And I'm so excited. It's called One for the Blackbird, One for the Crow, and it's by an author called Olivia Hawker. And it's the story of 2 neighbouring farms, and something happens at the beginning of the book, and that results in the 2 women in the 2 neighbouring farms having to come together to support each other to get through the sort of winter season. The book is fantastic. It's so evocative. I was out walking and it was pouring down with rain and, all of the Englishness going on around me, yet I was transported to the prairies of Wyoming with all of the sounds and the sights and everything that was going on. It's so, so beautifully written. So the first thing we've got to do before we dye our yarn is, of course, we've just got to have a look at everything that we are going to need to dye up the beautiful yarn. Okay, so here is everything that we're going to need today. So first of all, I've got my pot that I'm going to be dyeing the yarn in. So I've got 2 pots here, one for the main colour and then one for something else that I'm going to be doing. So yeah, it's my stainless steel pots that I use every time I dye yarn. All of your equipment that you use for dyeing yarn, only use it for dyeing yarn because dye powders are toxic. So stainless steel dye pots. I've then got my gloves, I've got my mask, of course, something to protect your work surface. So I've got some old oilcloth and some tea towels. I've got my big mixing spoon, always at hand when I'm dyeing. We've got our measuring spoon, which as always is 1/8 of a teaspoon, and then some paint brushes for speckling. We've got my dye book with my recipe. Today we're also going to be using this little pot because we're going to be mixing up a custom colour, so we've got that. And then citric acid, which is our mordant, and the mordant is the substance that makes the dye permanently stick to the yarn. So that's all of the kind of tools and notions, and the last thing I need to tell you about is, of course, the dyes that we're going to be using today. So I've got 6 colours today, and I've got a mixture of all 3 dye brands. I quite often do this, don't I? But what I will do is, as always, I'll tell you the colour, I'll tell you exactly what the dye is, and then the sort of colour it is, so you can substitute in if you want to do that. First of all, we've got 3 colours that are going to be the ones that we're going to use to make a custom colour. So those 3 colours are all jacquard, and we've got pink, which is 608. We've got fire red, which is 618, and we've got vermilion, which is 611. We've then got 2 shades of purple. So we've got Jacquard Lilac, which is 612. And we've got landscape dyes in sorbet. So the last colour is a green, and it's my favourite green. It's Dharma and it's sour apple. I think that says 471. So sour apple is, as it sounds, it's like the skin of a Granny Smith apple. It's that kind of bright, zingy green. The two purples, lilac from Jacquard is, as that sounds, a lilac shade. And then sorbet, the landscape one, this one has got a lot of pink in it. So it's a very like violety purple, really, really pretty shade. And then the three pinky reds. So the pink is just that true pink, sort of like it's similar to, I think it's similar to like ballerina pink from Dharma, I think it is. We've then got vermilion, which is it's kind of a pink leaning red, I would say. And then fire red is like fire engine red. So that's all of our dyes. So the last thing we need to talk about is the yarn. Right, so the yarn that I'm dyeing today. Now, as always, I'm going to be dyeing a single 100 gram skein of fingering weight yarn as our main colour. And that is this one. So this is an 85-15 blend. So that's 85 superwash merino, 15% nylon, and it's 400 metres. It's the same base that I've been dyeing on for quite some time now, and it's the same one we've been using through this series. And then I thought it'd be fun, although we're not using any other colour to knit our cowl, because we're going to be knitting it into our cowl, I thought it might be fun this time to dye up a skein on a fluffy base. Now, I've never done this before with you. These days there's either like a mohair silk, isn't there, or I've seen more and more commonly the Suri alpaca and silk, and that's what I've got here. So I've got a skein of the Suri alpaca and silk, and this is 50 grams and there's 300 metres here. I think the Suri alpaca is a bit thicker than your typical mohair lace. So when you use it, I think people interchange them. You know, they'll use one or the other, because I find the Suri alpaca much softer. So that's the other one we're going to be dyeing. So they've been soaking away here in a tablespoon or so of citric acid and some warm water. They've had a nice soak for a good half hour. So we're ready now to start dyeing up our colourway for our lovely book. Right, so the very first thing we are going to do is to make up our custom mix. Now, this particular colour, the reason I'm sort of custom making it is because this colour is reflecting some strawberry preserves that are eaten by one of the characters. And in the past, I've dyed up some yarn that I used to knit a pair of socks. It was the short and sweet pattern of mine. And I dyed up a set to make it look like strawberries, and it's that colour. I looked back in my dye book to see what colours I used to create that strawberry colour, and it's almost the same. I took out one colour which wasn't a pinky red colour. So what I'm going to do, I've got my 1/8 of a teaspoon. I'm going to make up a mix and I'll tell you the proportions. So I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of pink. So this is the Jacquard pink, so 2 of that. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of vermilion. Okay. And then just half a teaspoon of the fire red, because that is a really strong red. So that's our mix to create a lovely strawberry pinky red colour. So I'm just going to give it all a mix. You can see the sort of different shades in there. So we won't use all of this to dye the yarn. I'm going to use a little bit to dye that Suri alpaca afterwards. And then you could just put this into a little screw top jar if you wanted to keep it. Or you can get another pot on the stove, get another skein of yarn, dump it in and dye yourself up a whole skein if you want to do that to use up the dye. So there we go, that's our mix all done. Okay, so on my stove here, I've got heating up it's about a third full of water, and we've got another scoop, about a tablespoon of citric acid in there as well. So that's heating up now. So I'm going to put my skein in the pot because this colourway is a variegated. So we're starting off with the yarn in the pot. So I'm just going to grab the skein, make sure I get the right one, squidge it off, so give it a little bit of a shake, and I'm going to drop it into the pot. And as I drop it in, I'm just going to sort of move it all around to get as much surface area of the yarn on top of the water. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to sort of sprinkle in, we're not going to use paintbrushes today actually, although this one does ultimately have an element of specklish look about it. We're not going to be using paintbrushes, it's more of a saturated, variegated, that kind of a look. So that's heating up now. It just needs to be hot but not boiling. Right, that's nice and steamy and hot now. So first of all, we're going to use our strawberry mix. So I'm going to get 1/8 of a spoon of that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap and work in sort of swirly sort of ribbons of colour, and just go over a few areas like this. And then I go back to the beginning and go back over again until I've used up that 1/8 of a spoon. You can see that colour, can't you? It's really intense colour, really gorgeous. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to leave it for a couple of minutes. You know, I'm just standing over it and watching it. You know, I'm not going to walk away, because what I want to happen is I want some of that real intenseness to stay put, but then I also want a little bit of colour to bleed, and it is naturally doing that. I don't know if you can see, but like down here and around here you can see it started to bleed in to the yarn around it, but we're going to help that a little bit in a second. So I'm just going to go in now and follow the line of the, where, you know, the sort of swirl of the colour, and just help it a little bit, just encourage it to bleed out into the rest of the yarn, because we don't want the whole of the skein to all of a sudden be pink. We just want it to gently bleed out. So I'm just now going to leave that until it's fully set, which will probably be about 5 minutes or so. Okay, so that's now ready to be turned. So the way that I check is I just get my big spoon and I go into an area like here where there's a lot of colour, and if you tap down you can see there's no bleeding now coming from that area. It's not going into this white. So that's ready to be moved. Now red is a funny thing because it's quite difficult, I find, to set or to get all of the red into the yarn. You usually get a bit of residual in the water, but because we aren't using it in a very saturated way, we should be okay in terms of the water shouldn't be too pink when I lift it up. Now I've said that now, haven't I? Let's see, shall we? Oh look, it's clear, yes. So we've got our yarn lifted up here, and you can see we've still got some really lovely clear areas without dye on. So I'm now just going to give this a little shufty, and also at the same time I'm going to just flip it over like that. So now we're going to pop that back in, and when we do that we want to sort of pull up to the surface any areas that you see that are really without any of that colour. What we're going to do now is just add a bit more of that pink mix, and this time I'm probably just going to use about 1/2 of my spoon. And you know, I'm just going to do what I did before, because it doesn't matter if we go back over areas that we covered before. So just go in and do some little swirls again, little ribbons, and use up that 1/2 and 1/8 that we've got there. Okay, and then again I'm just going to let that be for a minute and then just encourage it down a little bit. There we go. So I'm just going to give that about 5 minutes. Right, so it's time now for the next colour, which is our purple shades. So we've got 2 of those, if you remember. We've got the sorbet and we've got lilac. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our sorbet and we're going to put the sorbet on first, and then directly on top of that we're going to put some lilac. So first of all, it's the sorbet, so about 1/8 again, and I'm going to go primarily for areas that don't seem to have a lot of the red, because we want this to be variegated, so we want to see the individual colours. But it really doesn't matter if you get, you know, one colour going into another, because that's just what happens with variegators. You know, that's the point, that you're going to get some crossover. So I'm going to get a bit more sorbet. And then before we do anything else, we're going to go directly on top of that with the lilac. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us depth of colour. Can you see that? We've got the sorbet here, which is much more pinky, and then the lilac is a much darker colour. You know, by the time you've done that, it's kind of had a little minute. So just go in with your spoon and just give it a really gentle little encourage. So now, we're just going to leave that for 5 minutes again to set. Right, so we're just going to give this a little move. Doesn't it look lovely? It just looks like crushed fruit, doesn't it? And we're just going to add a bit more of the purple now. So I'm just going to give that 5 minutes, and then we're going to put in the last colour. Right, so the last colour, which is our sour apple. What I'm going to do with this is just shoot through a few little highlights of this green. And when we sit down and have a chat about this book, I'll tell you more about where I got all of the colours from, where the inspiration came from. So what we're going to do is same thing, but I'm going to look for areas that really don't have intense purple or intense red, and just sort of flash through like that some little bits of green, because these are just highlights. They're not intended to be, you know, really prominent within the skein. And push again, and just let that set. And then we're just going to do one final move, one final turn. As I lift it up, you'll get an idea of like the little, can you see these little hints of green? It's so fun and spring-like. Drop it back down. There we go. And just add our final little flashes of green. So now what I'm going to do is just raise the temperature a little bit. It's really hot in there, so you don't need to raise it very much. But I just want to make sure we're definitely at that point of simmer. So, you know, just before it starts to boil like crazy, and that's moving now. The surface of the yarn is moving. So I can now happily turn that off and pop it outside to cool down. Right, so we're now ready to dye up our extra little skein. So the skein of floof, the Suri alpaca and silk, we're going to dye that up. So in the pot here, I've got it about half full of water, and we've got another scoop of citric acid. So I'm going to use the mix the sort of strawberry mix. And we're going to go really delicate with this. So I'm just using about a quarter, I guess, of that strawberry mix. And let's just see what that does. Isn't that fun when it just goes in like that? So give it a nice mix. I just want a really delicate shade of sort of strawberry, I guess. Because you could use this to, I guess my thought is that, you know, I'm only going to need a little bit of the skein to knit up into the cowl, so you could then hold it double with the suri and knit something fun, couldn't you, with the rest of it? So yeah, I mean, that's a really delicate shade. Shall we see what colour that comes out? It's really weird, this fibre, and it's very like the mohair. I think the mohair is even more weird because when it's wet, it's sort of just like a solid lump, and because of that, it takes dye really differently. So I'm going to get this in and we'll see what shade we've got. Oh, it's pretty. So just drop it in and just let that take up that dye for a second. Let's have a little look. Oh, it's very pretty. This is the sort of shade I wanted. And the silk, because there's two different fibres in there as well, there's alpaca and there's silk, they take the dyes in different ways. So I'm just letting that absorb that little bit of dye that's in there. It's a really pretty pink, isn't it? But I'll do one other thing, because I want you to see what happens when you try and speckle. You can't really speckle with this type of a fibre, I think. It just doesn't work. I think because it's so fibrous, because there's all of those teeny tiny fibres, it just sort of sits on the surface and it doesn't really speckle. It's really odd. But that's absorbed all of that, and that pink is beautiful. I kind of, in a way, don't want to spoil it by speckling it. But we'll just put on a little bit, just so you can see what it looks like. So I'm just going to get a bit of the dye on the paintbrush. So there's a teeny bit there, a bit more over here. And it just sort of sits there. A little bit here. And it starts to bleed before it really, you know, it just doesn't speckle. Can you see how it's more of a, just sort of a lump? And it just starts to bleed in. It just doesn't sit on the surface of the yarn very well. So I'm going to push like that with my spoon, because then I'll just get some tones in there, which I think will be nice. Can you see there's no speckles there? You just get this sort of lump of colour, which is why I'm pushing it straight away, because then I'll just get some nice tones in there, which actually I think will be lovely, won't it? So this is why, do you know, when you see dyers, you know, they'll put out a picture where they have like a DK weight and a fingering weight and then maybe a mohair or a suri, and the suri version of that colour, it never looks anything like the actual colour, because it's just such an odd fibre to dye. You can see it looks like a stain, I always think. But let's just move it a little bit and just put on a little bit more, just so we get a bit of tone running through the whole thing. And then I will show you, when we're back in the studio, what this looked like. So let's just add a little bit more, just so that we're getting a bit, you know, a bit of tone over the whole of the skein, and just go in and push it straight away. It kind of doesn't really bleed very far either, which is why I think it kind of looks like a bit like it's stained. There we go. But isn't it a super pretty colour? That mix is such a gorgeous pink. So I'm just going to let that now come up to a nice hot temperature, and I'll stick it outside with the other one to cool down. So there we go, that's our beautiful yarn all dyed up and cooling outside. So come back in part 2 when we're going to sit in the cosy corner, we're going to have a chat about the book, and then we're going to get that yarn rinsed, dried, and start knitting it up into our lovely cowl.
Wasn't that lovely? I loved that pink. Of course, we saw it, didn't we? In the sock at the start.
We did.
Just look a little bit different though on the Suri.
I've got the fluff here.
Yes.
I'll show you.
Well, no, show it now.
No, I can show it now, can't I?
Yeah, don't show the other one yet.
No.
No. But show it now.
Oh gosh, I haven't got the project.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
I need to get
It's
it.
not till later on in the show.
Okay, it's in a bag up
So
there.
can we please see the lovely
So
pink
here's
yarn?
the Suri.
Woohoo!
Look how fluffy it is. Ooh, it's like a teddy bear. It's so fluffy. So it's a very similar colour to the socks. And do you know where I speckled onto it? Because it just doesn't work with this type of a yarn. You can sort of see it just, can you see here, it just produces a little darker patch. So it doesn't really speckle, I find, at all.
It's a gorgeous pink though, and it
But
looks
it's a
marvellous
beautiful pink, and it's
in
so,
those socks.
the Suri is so soft.
Yes.
You know, if you're really sensitive with mohair, which I am, then Suri is a great alternative
Lovely.
because it's super soft, like
Yeah.
it's lovely.
The main colour though, I think, is an absolute triumph. But
Yes.
we're going to be seeing it properly
Okay.
in the second part. When
Yeah, I will
you get it
retrieve
all
my
dry
project
and
bag. Yes.
skein it up, and then knit it into the project. It's going to be marvellous.
Yes.
Right now though, it's time for Kay to ask.
Dan Jones.
Yes.
What's off your needles?
It's a Quantock hat. It's another one for my mum. The first one I knitted it came out bigger than this.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Is this one smaller?
It came out way bigger than this.
Gosh, is this going to even fit?
Yeah, it will, because the other one
Yeah. Does
was tiny.
Right.
So the first hat that I knitted, which was the windchief, that came out about this size, and she put that on and it fitted.
Oh, right.
So I'll just give her both, and then she's got two choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll
But
be
the
perfect.
colours are lovely, aren't they? This yarn is from, where's it
It's
from?
Feederbrook Farm
Thank
Yarns.
you.
Hard to say. Feederbrook Farm Yarns. I've got it now.
It's not, it's just Feederbrook Farm.
Feederbrook Farm, sorry.
Yeah.
I bet they do
Lovely.
great beef as well.
I don't think
No,
they do.
they probably
You
don't.
can't
No,
say that.
sorry.
Don't think it's that type of a farm.
Lamb.
No.
Sorry.
Well, I don't know.
I'll stop talking.
I don't know.
Stop
if they-
talking. But yeah, Quantock hat. Second one I've knitted. You can see the lovely Quantocks here.
No,
in
you
the hills.
can't.
Yes, you can.
No,
and,
you
and there's a
can't.
lovely sunset above. So I'll be sending that to my mum. Lovely
Yeah,
finished.
but the colours are
object.
beautiful, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I
lovely.
think that will fit her.
Yes. Oh, it will. I know it will.
Right.
Okay, Jones. What's off your needles?
I have finished a pair of socks just in time for Easter. I finished the cream egg socks. Woohoo! Look. How fun are they? So these are knitted using a skein of yarn from Crafty Clegg Creations, who is Jeanette Clegg and her husband Timothy. And they dyed up, or I should say Timothy dyed this yarn and Jeanette put it in her Etsy shop, and I managed to get a skein. So I was really thrilled. So it's this self-striping yarn that resembles Cadbury's cream eggs. And I used my Fairground pattern, which is just perfect for self-striping yarn. And I put in a chocolate brown heel and toe just from my stash. It's a sparkly one actually, but I think it works absolutely fine. So these are now going to go to Bryony, and she's got some cream egg socks for Easter. Isn't that fun?
Perfect.
Yay!
And interesting that we're talking about Bryony's feet, because Bryony was sat watching the television with Kay the other day.
Yeah.
And she said to her, Bryony said to Kay, you know this best foot forward thing? Which foot is it?
She said, is it your right foot? Do you use your right foot? Because that's, your dominant one. Oh my gosh, I just about fell off the sofa laughing. God love her.
So for the last 18 years, if anyone had said to her, put your best foot forward,
She literally would have put her best foot forward. Oh, bless her. She didn't know. And to be fair, why would you know about a saying like that if it's not something that's used commonly
No.
with kids at school, which they wouldn't, would they, really?
I think I probably told you before, for years I did think par for the course was part of the course.
Yeah. Oh, she laughed about it.
Until someone tells you, how could you know?
No,
Like
I
you
said,
said,
oh, darling, it doesn't literally mean to put your best foot forward. It's a saying, do your best.
Yeah.
Attack something in the best way that you can. She went,
But maybe if you were like setting off up a tricky mountain,
you would be putting your best
you
foot
need
forward.
to put your dominant foot forward.
True.
So,
that's a good
in its
point.
literal sense,
when you start walking, so you stood and you start walking, do you always start walking with your dominant side?
You would think so, but I wouldn't start analysing
because then it wouldn't be natural, would it?
No.
If you stood there thinking, which one do I start with, you wouldn't know, would you? So what you need to do is the next time we go for a walk, you need to pay attention to which one
Gorgeous
Yes.
socks. Ready for Bryony to
Socks
put her best foot forward.
Best foot forward.
We shall now put our best foot forward into the second part of the Yarny Book Club.
Welcome back everybody to part 2 of the Yarny Book Club, when we are dyeing up yarn inspired by this fantastic book. So our yarn is now cooling outside, so before we get it rinsed and dried and all of that good stuff, it's time to have a sit down and a chat about this fantastic book. So I'm in my cosy little book corner just to have a little chat about the book whilst our yarn is doing its thing outside. You probably got the impression already from the little bit that I've said that I really love this book, and I did really love this book, and it was really out of my book reading zone. I mean, generally speaking, I like kind of really non-challenging books, let's say, and this one isn't a challenge either, not by any means, but for starters, the kind of era, I guess historical book. When I say historical, it is historical, it was 1876, so it is historical fiction, isn't it, I guess? Would that be the genre? And I don't normally read books that are set in the past. I think that's the main thing. The books I read are usually sort of set now in modern times. I think the thing that made me want to read this is it felt like it was sort of a step up from like the Little House books, because they're also set in that pioneer type environment where you've got lots of people who are setting off on the trail and going in search of a better life. It gave me that comforting Little House sort of vibe. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to give this a go because it was so different to anything that I'd sort of read before. And when I first started listening to it, I almost stopped listening to it because the narrator, she's got a lovely voice, but she spoke really slowly. I discovered, thanks to Dan, that you could speed up the reader, and I didn't know this. I sped it up to 1.2, which is only a little bit faster, but I found that that was perfect, and then I could listen to it, and I was just addicted. Yeah, so it's the story of these two families, and right at the very beginning there's this incident, which means, I'm not giving anything away because it does say on the back, one of the women loses her husband, and it basically meant that the two women really had to collaborate to get themselves and their families through the winter, which was on its way, because they knew that they couldn't manage their farms individually, so they were going to have to pool their resources. And these two women did not like each other because of events that had happened right at the beginning of the book, so it was a real challenge. But by the end of the book, they kind of turned that around, and because of the way that they'd had to help each other and their families, and the sort of things, the crises that they went through, they came out the other end and they were sort of friends, and it was just a brilliant example, really, of humans, isn't it? And how, put to the test, we can find a way through situations and put aside your sort of personal feelings and just focus on what needs doing to get you and your family through it. And the thing that I loved most about this book was the way that this writer, Olivia Hawker, the way that she writes. The descriptions of things in the book. It's just absolutely beautiful. You know, the way that she describes just simple things. Like right at the very beginning of the book, on the first page, she's describing these blackberry bushes that one of the characters is stood by, and the description, it was just like I was stood there smelling these blackberries and just thinking about eating them. It's just so evocative and so beautifully written. It isn't a fast-moving book. So if you don't like books that have a slower pace, then I would say this might not be for you at all. It is much more of a gentle story, I would say, but definitely has moments and situations in it that are at that point quite dire, you know, the situations that they were in. So the particular bit of the book that I used as inspiration for the colour, you might not think when you see the yarn and you see the book, I mean, for starters, the cover's lovely, but my yarn colour is nothing like the cover of the book. Where I took my colours from, it's in chapter 10, and the particular bit, if you're reading it, so it's chapter 10, and then it's the bit that's headed Clyde. Clyde is Netime's son, who's 16, 17, and he's like the man of the house now, so he's having to deal with everything. But in this particular section, he's just woken up and they've just gone through a really scary situation that they've dealt with, and everything was okay. So he wakes up the next morning and he goes downstairs, and both women want to give him this hearty breakfast because he's just did such an amazing job the day before. So they start cooking him breakfast, and the first thing he has is some preserves on some bread. So they make their own bread, obviously, and this jar of strawberry preserves, one of the women had found it in her pantry and she'd forgotten and didn't realise it was there, and they'd gone through the winter obviously with very little in terms of fresh food, and she finds this jar of strawberry preserves and she's like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that was there. I'm gonna cut him some bread and I'm going to give him some of that thickly spread on it. And it's just that thought of this delicious strawberry jam on top of some homemade bread after this, you know, this young lad has gone through what he went through the day before. And the way he describes eating that strawberry jam and what it felt like for him, it was just like, wow. I mean, it's basically like it feels like it's a smack in the face because it's so sweet. And because that was all lacking through the winter, you know, he's had this really sweet, delicious jam. That just really struck me. So that's where the strawberry came from. And then it goes on to describe within that same section, it describes the colour of the sky as being like purplish. And it also mentions a lilac that's just coming into bloom. So that's where I got the purple from. And then the green is because it's spring and they're talking about how, you know, all the shoots are coming up and the cattle have got all this lovely fresh grass to eat. So that's where I got the green from. So it's all within that little section. But I must tell you who my favourite character is in this book, and I haven't mentioned her yet. And it's a 13-year-old girl, and she's called Beulah, which I love that name. It's such a cool name. And this girl, right, when I first started listening and hearing about her, I was like, gosh, you know, what is it with this girl? They describe her as dreamy. Oh, she's such a dreamy girl, because it's like she's off in her own little world. And you think that's all there is to her. But actually, this girl is amazing. And she's like first of all, she's sort of like an animal whisperer. She seems to be able to communicate with animals. So she has this definite way with animals. She also has a way with nature, and she's really in tune with nature. And she just relates to the natural world around her in the most amazing way. And she loves where she lives. She loves the prairie. You know, she loves the nature around her, and just takes joy in like just going and sitting and listening to the river and being still. And she's very much in the moment. You know, that's what I really admired most about her. She's completely in the moment, and I think that's what it is with her, you know. And it's really, I think it really, really relevant for us as well, living in the times that we live in, and with all the distractions that we have in this modern world, that it is difficult, isn't it, to be present in the moment that you're in. And Beulah just does that beautifully. A really fantastic read, and if you like this type of a book, I would say if you like Little House on the Prairie and that kind of genre, and or even if you just want to find out a bit more about the pioneer way of life and the challenges that they had and the way that they lived, then I think this would be a really brilliant book. And then the very final thing that I just wanted to mention is at the back of the book, and you see, should I tell you this? I'm not going to tell you, because I'm not sure whether this is detailed in the sort of synopsis on, you know, when you read about it. But at the back, there's like author's notes on it. So I read that. There's a few pages of information, and the author told you why she wrote it and what her inspiration was. And when I read that, I was like, I loved it even more. Let's play it safe. I'm not going to say what she actually says about the book, but maybe if I'll tell you what to do, because if you go on Goodreads, I think it's Goodreads, and read some of the reviews, some people have said this particular thing, that they didn't know this about the book until they got to the end. And it just made it even more special for me, having read why she wrote it and where her inspiration came from. Yeah, so I'll leave you with that. So yeah, that's the fantastic book this time, and now we've got to get out there, haven't we? We've got to rinse that yarn, we've got to get it dry, and we've got to get to the knitting. Okay, so we're ready now to rinse our beautiful yarn. So I'm just going to pop in some of the Eucalan lavender. Lovely, so I'll do main colour first. Oh, it looks lovely. So we're just going to give this a lovely rinse. You can, if you want, just leave them in the bowl, you know, leave it in there for 10 minutes and go away, come back. But I tend to just give it a few little dunks and a bit of a swim around. And you don't have to rinse the Eucalan. So I'll just then give it a little squidge. Don't ever wring your yarn though, just a nice squidge. And there we go. Looks beautiful. And this pink is just gorgeous, isn't it? I do think with this type of a yarn, you're just better off with a tonal, you know, rather than trying to get it to mimic a particular colourway. I think just get a tonal that matches whatever yarn it is you're holding it with double, because that's generally what people do, and then it will just be lovely. It reminds me of candy floss. It does, as I said before, it does, the water just runs out of it. It's very odd. So there you go, but lovely. Oh, they look lovely together, held together. That would be beautiful. So we now need to just get these dry, and then we'll be ready to start knitting. Okay, so here we have it. A beautiful skein of one for the blackbird, one for the crow. It's time now to skein this up, which is very exciting. It's such a spring-like colour as well, I think, isn't it? It's just, oh, it's so lovely. I can't wait to see how this knits up. So let's get it on the old Swift and get it skeined up. Right. Okay, so we just need to snip the ties. That's the one, oh no, it's not the one that's got the ends. So that one we can just snip and pull off. Yeah, this is the one with all the ends. And there we have it pulling away nicely. So what I've realised with this ball winder is it doesn't like it when it gets to like the end of the skein. You know, when it gets quite full on the winder. That's the point when it kind of starts shouting at me and saying, no, I've got enough yarn now, I don't want any more. But we're going to get the 100 grams on it. So here we go with the winding. Hey, that went really well. No like hiccups or anything. So let's see. Oh, it looks lovely on in the cake. That's pretty good for my ball winder. Pretty good. Oh, and it looks so lovely. This might be a skein where it turns into socks, I'm sure, with the remainder of the skein. It's really pretty, and you can see all of those shades of the purple and the green and that strawberry pinky red. Just lovely. So it's time now, isn't it, to get out our reading corner cowl and start knitting it in. Right, so we are all set up now and ready to start knitting the next section of our reading corner cowl. So here's my lovely cowl up to the point of where we finished last time. So these are the two previous books. We've got the lovely Agatha Christie, and then there were none. And then we've got Danielle Steele, The Ghost. And now we're going to have this one. So I'm loving that they're all very different. And I'm not deliberately doing that. I'm just going where the book tells me to go. But I think this is going to be fun. I mean, these ones, it's funny because we started in the sort of depths of winter, didn't we? And we're now coming into spring. And I think that sort of reflects in the cowl as well, which is lovely. So yeah, we're ready now to start the next section. So the last section ended here. You can see what we're doing is we've got a wider section of the actual book colour itself, and then half the amount in the contrast. And this contrast colour we dyed up in the very first show when we did the Agatha Christie one, and I called this one Miss Havisham, and I think it's just the perfect foil for, you know, the other colours to kind of stand out against it. So here we go then with our next colour. Very exciting to get this bright colour in there. I just ended that final round just one stitch before the end so it didn't fall off my needle. So I've cut the yarn, but I just need to knit that last stitch of that contrast round. Slip. And now the way that this little texture pattern works here, you can see we're doing a little bit of texture on the changeover. So it's just a 2-round little stitch pattern. And the first round, when we change yarns, whether that's changing yarn for a book colour or changing yarn for Miss Havisham, we're going to knit the first round, and then we're going to knit 1 purl 1 on the second round, and then the remainder of the rounds for that section are all just plain knit. The book sections are 20 rounds. The first 2 rounds is what I've described, so plain knit and then knit 1 purl 1, and then the following rounds up to round 20 are just plain knit. So let's get started. So I'm going to bring in, where's my tail? There it is. So I'm just going to leave a tail to weave in, loop it over, and then just start to knit. I have tried the method of, you know, when you weave in as you go, when you change colours. I have tried various methods that I've seen, you know, videos about, and in all honesty, I don't particularly like the way they look in the fabric. I think it sort of is a bit obvious and a bit lumpy, so I just prefer to weave in afterwards, and I don't find that a bother, but obviously entirely up to you what you do with your own project. So yeah, this round is just plain knit, and then the next round will be knit 1 purl 1, and then I'll just be doing lovely knits all the way round up to round 20. I said round an awful lot then, didn't I? So there we go. That is the next Yarny Book Club yarn all dyed, and I'm knitting it in, and I'm sure it's going to look absolutely beautiful. I always end up knitting really quick for the first few rounds because I just want to see what it's going to look like. So yeah, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So I really hope you enjoyed that. I really, really hope that if you decide to read the book or listen to it, which is what I did, that you enjoy it as well. I absolutely loved it. It was just such a pleasure to go on my walks every day and listen to it. And to be fair, I was listening to it all the time. I was doing the housework and listening to it. I was cooking and listening to it. I just couldn't stop. I just absolutely, absolutely love this book. So I really hope you enjoy it if you decide to read it, and if you decide to dye up the yarn. Or it might be you want to just go to your stash. I've seen quite a few people doing this, just going to their stash and finding something that was sort of similar, you know, that had sort of pinks, purples, greens. I'm sure, you know, with your stashes that you're all going to be able to find something that will suit. So thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you next time for more exciting Yarny Book Club.
Wasn't that wonderful? I love the Reading Corner review. When we delve into the reasons why you've chosen the book, and also talk about the book itself.
I know, can you tell that I really loved that book?
Yes.
After I'd finished filming, I said to Dan, oh gosh, I think I've gone on too much, haven't I? I've just raved too much about this book. And then I feel really bad because I think, oh, what if people read this book because I've recommended it and then they don't like it? I'll feel really bad.
The thing is, though, as I said to Kay, it is merely someone's opinion.
It's true.
All that, you know, we live in a world now where people don't want to share opinions as much as they, you know, opinions are hard to come by, aren't they?
Worried to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's always really good to share an opinion. And, you know, like I say, it's just your opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, if you do read it, I hope you enjoy it. But conversely,
everybody's different.
If you don't, everyone's different. Yeah. But yes, I have knit it into my cowl now. But here it is in the cake, just to give you another look at it. Isn't it pretty? So spring-like. And Dan's right, it does look a bit puddingy, doesn't it? It's like squashed blackberries and squashed strawberries and raspberries, with like the green being maybe the leaf or something on a raspberry. So yeah, I have finished the section in the cowl and it looks just lovely. Here it is all knitted up. Isn't it fun? And it's so different to the others. I think it's just going to be it's like a sampler. I'm thinking of this cowl as like a sampler for these yarns. And it's just going to be so nice to look back on it and remember the books. Because, you know, I remember what the books were and what inspired me. And that's just a really nice thing. But look, it's knit up so lovely.
It's like a temperature blanket, but with books.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah, that's right.
Gorgeous.
And it looks just lovely, doesn't it? I'm so pleased with how that's knit up. So, it was really nice to knit because I was getting pops of that green and you get bright red because we added in, you know, that red as well. But then you get the soft pink, you get different shades of purple, you get like a more bluish purple because the lilac, I think is a more bluish purple, and the sorbet is very much a pinkish, violety purple. So you get different shades from that, and it just looks gorgeous.
So the Yarny Book Club is back in May.
May?
Yes, because next time...
Wow.
England, a Castle Nation, is back, when we will be continuing the story of Henry VIII and his 6 wives. Right now, though, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Oh, yes. Our radio show is back next week with a second part of our Yorkshire special.
Oh.
We set out to record what we thought was a one-off show about Yorkshire, but we went down such a deep accent rabbit hole.
Yeah, we did.
Kay gave us lots of sort of Yorkshire accents, which was marvellous.
Just offended everybody. Well, I am from Yorkshire, so, you know.
So am I.
Yep.
We then started talking about accents in general from across the world, which was fun.
Yeah,
but we did delve very much, you know, into our sort of background in Yorkshire, and next time we're going to be talking about some of our favourite places, what it's like to live here. There's so many sort of bits and pieces which we really want to share with you about the county, which has been pretty much our home our whole life. So that's back on Friday next week, Thursday, if you're a Baker Bear patron. Also as well, Kay's got some lovely reviews on the way. There's a bag review. And some John Arbon sock yarn. And
which I've got here.
You're going to be showing that in a minute, which is rather fun. You've also got a brand new Magic Loop jogless cast-on tutorial coming.
We've refreshed it,
cool. So that's all coming soon. But Kay's got some yarn to show.
Yeah, so I bought a couple of things. So first of all, I'll show you the yarn from Eden Cottage that I was talking about at the beginning of the show. So this is the base, the same base that I used to knit the pink socks, but I dyed that yarn for the pink socks. This one I bought from Eden Cottage, and I saw this one and I thought of Bryony because she loves greens and she loves sage green. So I got this one, which is lovely sort of shades of sagey green going into a dark grey. And this colourway is Reed Bed, and the base at Eden Cottage is Hayton 4-ply. And you can see on the label there it's 350 metres. So it is classed on their website, I think, as a fingering weight. I'm sure it is. Well, 4-ply. At Eden Cottage, I don't think she says fingering weight, she says 4-ply, which is sort of like an English term. But yeah, it's 350 metres or 380 yards. So you can see that is significantly less. You know, the standard 75-25 is usually 425 metres, I think. And this is 350 metres. So it's significantly plumper. And, you know, I'm knitting, as I showed you, using 2.75 and 56 stitches. And it does recommend a needle size of 2.5mm up to 4mm for this. So, yeah, depending on your project, obviously. But yeah, it's lovely, really nice yarn. So I've got that one to knit for Bryony at some point.
And also, there's this yarn that you're going to review.
I am, yeah. I'm going to do a review of this yarn. And I can't remember where I saw somebody knitting this yarn. I was aware of it. But I saw something and someone was knitting some socks using it, and it just sort of prompted my brain to think, oh, do you know what? I'm going to go and try that. So it's from John Arbon. And it's their Exmoor Sock 4-ply. It comes in these lovely 50-gram skeins. And I got these colours because it was the closest I could get to Detroit Lions colours. So these are going to be a little ode to the Detroit Lions. And I got 100 grams of the blue and 50 of the grey. So the grey is called Mizzle. The names are great, actually. And then the blue is Plashers, so it's like Splashers but without the S. And it's really interesting yarn. So it's made up of 60% Exmoor Blue Face, which is superwash, 20% Corriedale, which is superwash, 10% Zwarbles, which isn't superwash, and 10% nylon. And it does say that it's machine washable at 30 degrees. So you get 50 grams, you get 200 metres. So it's exactly a sock weight for me. It looks like a really nice yarn. It feels woolly, but not overly prickly at all. Feels really nice. There's a bit of a prickle there, you know, but nothing terrible. But it's going to be socks anyway. So yeah, I'm going to try this for Dan and see what it's like. So I think the next pair that I cast on after I've finished the Harry Potter ones, I think I'm going to try this. And what I'll do, because I've got 50 grams of this, I'll use it for heels and toes, but I might also put in a few sort of stripes at the top so it looks a bit sporty with it being football socks.
Cool.
Yeah, so it looks really nice.
Now, look, Easter is coming up.
Yes.
And for the first time ever, we're going to be with you on Easter Day.
We are.
Very exciting. With a very special patron exclusive show.
Yes.
It's available to our Silver, Gold and Platinum patrons live at 2 p.m. British summertime.
Because the clocks change.
Yes, so just look at your local listings.
Yes.
We can't get into this because if we do, we'll say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
so the one thing we're going to say is it's British summertime.
Yeah, it's British summertime, so yes, check locally.
2 p.m. But then, fear not, because once the live show's finished, 3:10, it's available for you to watch whenever you like, along with many seasons of our patron exclusive show. So as a bronze patron, $2 a month, you sign up as a bronze patron, you can immediately access all our past patron-only shows.
And there's a lot.
There's at least 5 years. I mean, that's a lot. For $2,
Yeah,
that's bonkers.
yeah. So you could watch loads and loads
And, of course,
loads of...
download our latest edition of Knitability as well,
Knitability.
a magazine. And we're working on some very special issues of Knitability. Our wonderful editor, Jen, we're coming up to our 50th issue.
Yes.
So we've got some very cool things going on in our 50th issue. We'll
We've got
talk about
some
that closer to the time.
brilliant people
Yes.
going to be involved in that.
Some of our
really
favourite people
exciting.
in the
Some of our
whole wide world.
Favourite people, yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, folks, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the video show featuring a Castle Nation. We'll see you then.
Take care, everybody. See you soon. Have a good Easter.
Bye.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your